Now on Enough Said with KFAN Radio's Dan Barrero, attorney and HoldingCourtPodcast.com's Ron Rosenbaum.
We love this place. Our kids. Excuse me. Harder than you think. And I remember Goldie Gopher walking down the steps in our basement, and Gracie singing the Minnesota fight song. That's why Minnesota.
Welcome back to another very emotional edition of Enough Said. My name's Dan Barrero. I'm joined by Justin Guard, and the lion tamer is Lori Fisher. Good luck with us today, because I think it's going to get vicious early.
Thank you. I might need it. As you said, emotional sound from the new athletic director for the U, Mark Coyle. He returns to the U after a short stint with Syracuse, and he replaces Norwood Teague, who resigned last summer. Is Coyle the right pick, Dan? He seems very passionate about the U.
Lori loves. She's
swept
that
up in
classic Minnesotan who just fell hook, line, and sinker for the blubbering, or the near blubbering. She doesn't know, of course, that he almost cried while talking about Dwayne Washington's shoes, which is a Syracuse player who he grew up worshiping as well.
Have you ever had Goldie Gopher come to a birthday party?
Not to my knowledge.
Then you don't know.
Yeah,
then you don't understand what that emotion felt like.
How compelling it is. Let's try to take the emotion out of it for a minute, although that might disappoint Lori. Let's just try to figure out whether this is a good move. We can never know, and I guess I got to be fair about this and say I originally liked the Norwood Teague hire.
Yeah.
I think you did too.
Very much.
That did not turn out well, my sources say. It turned out rather disastrous. And, but on paper, what I love about this is it's got everything, okay? If you want to go emotion route, like Lori, you got it. If you want to go one of us route, which we love here, you've got it in that he's Iowa, but he spent 4 years here. A couple of his kids were born here, as he pointed out. If you want to go, though, bigger picture and say, does this make sense? It's what he has done elsewhere, not at Minnesota, that I think makes this what I would call a big-time hire. And we rarely get to talk about big-time hires in this town because of time at Boise, where he did great job at cleaning up that mess, and it's a very powerful football program. And as you know, spent some time at Kentucky and then spent some time at Syracuse. It's his time in other places that I think gives his resume the breadth to say they did, after a horrible process leading up to this, I think they hit a home run.
And at every stop, his reputation is really, really good. You won't find, and we talked to people that worked with him in Boise, worked with him in Kentucky, worked with him here the first time around. Everybody that works with this guy loves him. And you're right, we're not accustomed to this. Now it's 3 big hires in a row that I know we're going to talk about. This was the most shocking. If you had to rank which team or which school is going to get it right.
I'd say Timberwolves.
I suppose that's true.
I'd say
ooh, I don't know,
pretty
though.
close.
More so than the Gophers?
Well, I'd say it's a little closer than you're suggesting.
I suppose so, but I was shocked by this one. And as of about 9:30 on the day he was hired, I was talking to people within the search saying, I've never been more dejected in my life. The Wolves look like they have a good hire. The Wild look like they have a good hire.
We're doomed.
Who's the University of Minnesota going to end up with, especially after those two? They're competing with those two in this town, right? They have a weird deal because they have to compete with pro teams.
Whether they want to or not.
Exactly. And then the news breaks, and no one had heard this guy at all. We've heard of him because he'd worked here, but in terms of the search,
or being
in terms
a
of the finalist, exactly, nobody thought this was even possible. And it does feel big time to be able to, after a really long search, get somebody from a Power 5 school with a really good reputation. We don't know how it's going to end up. You're right.
We never know.
And the university has a way of messing things up even when it's good. We've talked about that a lot. But all the signs are that this is a heck of a hire.
On paper, this looks like a better hire than Teague because, again, of his breadth of experience, both football and basketball related. And here's the kicker. Syracuse has a right probably to feel betrayed because he'd only stayed there 10 months, 10 and a half months. However, the real reason they seemed angry was they liked him. They thought he was good. They thought they'd found a guy to clean up the mess, take care of things after all their scandals, and that's a compliment in of itself. As if you may feel betrayed, but if you don't think the guy's that good, you don't even worry about it. But a lot of the frustration on the part of the coaches, the football and basketball coaches, was we think this guy knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And to think that after the huge committee nonsense and all that bureaucracy, that a place here where we had no reason to believe they would get it right, that they might, at least on paper, have gotten it right, is beyond stunning.
We got to give the president credit on this one.
Yeah,
we rip him enough, but we got to give him credit on this one.
Talking about the big hires. you guys, Coyle, and then you mentioned the Timberwolves, and then you have the new Wild coach, Bruce Boudreau. He's already taking a hard stance. Let's take a listen to him, what he had to say.
My job is to find the Achilles heel of every player and push that button to make them play the best they can. And the accountability thing is fairly easy. We're here to win, and if they don't want to play the way that it takes to win, then you're not going to play as much as you'd like to.
Dan, what do you think all these big hires mean to fans?
Well, first of all, I'm disappointed Lori couldn't have found the video of Boudreau blubbering.
Crying.
Because I think that happened at some point.
He swears a lot more. He swears a lot more than Coyle.
That's very true.
We think.
No, this is what you brought it up earlier. This is, like I said, we're the last few weeks on the show talking about all these hires. Tibbs to the Wolves, Boudreau now. We've not had a chance to talk about it until today. And now the AD hire. We're in
uncharted territory.
This is unexplored for us. The idea that, again, there's no guarantees. We always understand that. But we always seem to be taking the guy who we just hope we strike gold. Somebody else says he's got a chance to be really good. In all three cases, you got people with proven track records at that level. In other words, as AD, as head coach in hockey, as head coach in basketball. And so I don't even know if we're going to know what to do with this.
No, it's been weird.
We've not been in this position. I don't think ever since I've been here.
And this back to back to back. And don't forget what it takes to get people of this caliber that we didn't think any of these teams had in them. Taylor, we didn't think was going to spend the money. About $10 million between the coach and the general manager, right?
Absolutely.
The Wild had never paid more than $1 million for a head coach. They're paying Boudreau $3 million. And the new athletic director, Coyle's making $850,000 a year.
Which is below average.
But they're at least up there.
Double what we were doing with Norwood, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all three of them, whether they felt like they needed to because of the others or they just felt like we're sick of losing and
you know what this does, though?
What's that?
All expectations get raised.
They do.
And I think that's a good thing.
I think that's fine.
That's what we want to hope for. But that's the other side of this thing, is that each of them is going to be expected to basically – and again, he's not coaching football.
Right.
And he's not coaching basketball, the new AD, right? So – we still got some major hurdles here. In the case of Richard Pitino, for sure. This last year, I know you're more of a Pitino oboe than I am.
Yes.
Last year has been a shambles, and he's got to prove he's up to it. And even Clay's, who showed some promising signs, we got no guarantee where we are on football either.
We have to leave it there. Developing news. Let's move on. Enough said. Public schools must let transgender students use bathrooms and locker rooms that identify with their chosen identity. The Obama administration issued the directive, and already the lieutenant governor of Texas says they are possibly willing to forfeit billions of dollars in education money because of all this. Dan.
Well, I think this is going to end up in is there any doubt this is going to end up in the courts if it's not already? In fact, I think to a certain degree that's already where it's headed
with the Justice Department.
Yeah. I've made my position known on this before. It's not particularly popular, but if we have no concerns about separating in terms of when people are using the facilities, which we clearly had at once upon a time because we had restrooms for males and restrooms for females, and it's getting fuzzier and it's getting more complicated and getting more confusing, take all the labels off. That's what I do. Just take them all off and use whatever you want to use, because what's interesting in the fine print from the administration is, and this kind of surprised me, apparently you do have to get a note from the parent has to say there's some kind of a change is going on.
Yep.
So, but you don't really need a doctor involved. So I think that's where, for some of us who aren't, transgender phobic, there's a little confusion here about where. So every day you can change. What are the rules here? What if you don't fall into either category? What do you do in those situations as well? That we should be able to have some kind of discussion about.
But it is clear which way it's going, though.
No doubt.
I think it is going towards what you say at some point, because it is going to be a vicious battle, whichever way it goes. It already is.
Right.
And we're all at warp speed trying to figure out what exactly is going on here, whether it's in North Carolina or whether it's in Texas, what's going to happen with these bathrooms. I'm with you. We might as well just open them all up, maybe open them up, make them more private in there,
which is going to cost a lot of money.
Because if you are at all against this, if you ask any questions, you said it on the radio this week, you get pounded as a transgender phobe, and there's no way of winning that battle.
No.
So the way this is going, how vicious it already is, I think we're going down that road already, where they are just going to open them all up.
Yeah, I wish that the administration would be.
Coming up on Enough Said.
Is this a situation I want to put myself into? Do I want to put my family through this situation?
You don't feel safe at all because Last night my grandma was sleeping and she told me to sleep with her. So we were really scared.
Welcome back to Enough Said. There was a deadly shootout in North Minneapolis this week, and also in a different shooting, a 10-year-old girl was caught in the crossfire, hit in the foot when she was going to bed. You also have the Star Tribune article talking about how arrests are down there, but violence is up. Dan.
A very complicated subject, once again, which we've touched on in various ways. In fact, to broaden it out regarding potential slowdown accusations, the FBI director, I believe, basically said the stats indicate he didn't want to conclude with that's what it was happening, but that arrests were down in and crime up in a way that has him suspicious. And, you know, you start, I think, with what people don't want to admit. There was an editorial in the Star Tribune basically hammering the cops, basically saying they got to do their jobs. That sounds good.
Sounds very good.
It sounds wonderful. But to pretend that there's not a day-to-day reality here that is affected by sort of the gotcha mentality where we got the video cameras out, we've got people with cell phone cameras out, and immediately something goes viral, often without any sort of context, then are we really going to be all that surprised that cops are going to withdraw a little bit? I don't think there's any kind of a magical answer here, but I think there's got to be some honesty on in all parties that's inevitable what's going to happen. I mean, the Star Tribune story, there was something about concern that there weren't enough stops of people who looked shady. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the kind of generalization that gets you in trouble in the first place. So what exactly are we looking for here? It's sad because these are high crime areas in which you need the protection, but where do you go with it?
You hit on the key part of people saying they should be above this. Our police officers, they're supposed to be the best and the brightest. Right. They're supposed to protect us. It sounds really easy to say that, but they're also human beings. Yeah. They're not superheroes, and when they see people that they respect, their own, get put through the meat grinder over and over again, time and time again, there has to be a natural human reaction to say, do I really want to do this? Is this a situation I want to put myself into? Do I want to put my family through this situation? And so we talk about teachers and coaches giving up a lot of the times and getting out of the business, so to speak, because of it's harder to do their jobs because of parents and administrators and things like that. Would you
do this? No.
And remember, what we always forget is cops have to do this stuff in real time.
Yeah.
Whatever decision they make. It's easy for us to sit there on the couch or read the story or watch Fox 9 and say, I wouldn't have done that. Didn't they know this happened? Didn't they know that happened? Maybe, maybe not. But it's real time, and it's a lot tougher than a lot of people like to think.
Bad cops need to be exposed, revealed. I think we'll all agree with that.
Cops would agree with that.
And I think good cops would agree with that. But what happens is, let's be honest, there ain't any video that goes viral on a cop doing his or her job well. It just doesn't happen. And so the problem is that the video that shows a cop making a mistake or potentially doing something criminal or going over the line is then used to say, almost to paint with the broad brush that this is how all cops are, and all cops aren't like that. So the natural tendency is going to be, if it's 50-50, do I want to go down this road? And let's also be clear, in areas where there's high crime, this is messy, right? It's not, I don't think anybody would say it's easy to do those jobs in those situations in terms of who you're going after, even identifying what you need to go after. It's going to be messy by definition.
We have to move on, you guys. I know there's a lot more to say about this, but we do have to move on to a much different topic. Woody Allen says he's moved on after a column in The Hollywood Reporter accusing him of abuse. It was written by his son, Ronan Farrow. This comes after an op-ed article back in 2014 in which the filmmaker denied accusations by his adopted daughter that he had abused her when she was a child. Farrow writes that no one will ask Allen the tough questions because of his stardom, and also throws out Bill Cosby's name. Dan.
Well, here's my problem with this is a reality show, really waiting to be done, right? It's already happened. I don't like the Cosby comparison because in the case of Cosby, even though, again, he hasn't really been convicted of anything yet, I think the number of accusers is up to 60, okay? It's been pretty widespread. We're talking about over decades. In this situation, the accusation involves one individual, which doesn't mean it didn't happen, but it also means it's I don't think it's a good analogy. And beyond that, let's remember this was part of a very ugly court proceeding having to do with who takes the kids, who has custody of the kids. And the dirty little secret is stuff can get very vicious, people can get coached, et cetera, et cetera. The stuff that, on the other hand, though, that doesn't look good for Woody is, if you go back to the judge's report where he didn't give him access to the kids basically hardly at all, he said we can't prove the sexual stuff, but he's not as convinced as the therapist who ruled it out that it should be ruled out. So there's enough here probably to explore, but what do you do with it? Because this case isn't going anywhere legally, and Cosby's now at least seems to be headed in that direction.
It probably
finally.
is. Yeah, the numbers, you're right. But in terms of the Cosby situation of not questioning or worrying about the Hollywood machine, because we've seen that, the Sun talked about that with Woody. You make an accusation, and by the way, here comes PR director that has this A-list client, that A-list client. The LA Times doesn't want to get into it. Hollywood Reporter doesn't want to get into it. There are complexities when you go up against a really powerful figure, and there's complexities with friendships. I mean, the daughter in her op-ed, which is unbelievable if you read it in the New York Times a couple of years ago, talks about Alec Baldwin, Diane Keaton, saying, you remember me, where are you now? And it's complex because they're friends with Woody, and what do you want to believe about your friends? That they wouldn't be capable of that. And Diane Keaton said that as much. I believe him. I believe my friend.
And the backdrop here shouldn't be forgotten. Woody Allen married Mia Farrow's stepdaughter. She was of age, allegedly, but this is a kind of story that if it happens in the backwoods of Tennessee, we're talking about, we're doing hillbilly jokes, but because it's in New York and it's intellectual, we got a lot of people, I think, standing tall for Woody in ways that I don't quite get.
No, I don't either. And the friends, the complexities, like I said.
Coming up on Enough Said.
He absolutely deserves to be suspended. I got no sympathy for him.
And if I'm the Cubs, I walk him every single time he goes up to the plate.
Welcome back to Enough Said. Prince's trademark is up for debate. The singer's name, likeness, voice, even his symbol could get special protection under a bill that's racing through the state capitol. It's been dubbed the Prince Act. It stands for personal rights and names can endure. Is this bill moving too fast, Dan?
Yes, it is moving too fast, and you can love Prince's music, you can feel connected to that music in a way we've talked about on this very show, and still hate this bill, or at least the speed with which it's moving. That because there's a lot of legal folks who are a lot brighter than either one of us, who I think have raised some very legitimate questions about how broad this is. You do have this thing called the First Amendment, and so when it comes to intellectual property, I think we get, you don't want somebody to be able to steal Prince music, etc. But this is, as I understand it, a lot broader. It doesn't take into consideration some of the internet possibilities, etc. So we're back to, this happens so often where people get so emotional about this loss that then we're going to do everything we can, or whatever we're asked to do, including by his heirs. I say nothing should be passed this quickly at all, whether it's involved, because this is going to involve more than Prince. There's a lot of other people who are going to be affected by this, legally speaking, and it could have major ramifications.
Different states, I think when you have more celebrities, you deal with it more, right? I mean, California's had this on the books forever because someone dies in California, it's a big deal. New York, same thing. The reason it's such a big deal, it's huge business. And I wasn't familiar with that, but Michael Jackson, for example, his name, his likeness, all of that stuff has grossed about $1 billion since he died. I mean, that's crazy. Is it possible that the person who dies could dictate what happens to the trademark? Is that a stupid question?
Well,
should it go to the heirs? Should it go? Because the heirs obviously want a cut of that, right?
Correct.
That's good money for them. Really good money for them, especially when you factor in.
And who the heirs are, that's another thing that's got to be established here. This is very messy on several levels.
So maybe they couldn't because we still aren't, it's still kind of up in the air whether Prince had a will, did he not have a will, who gets what. But, I mean, we're talking huge money here at stake, and where should it go? Should it go to the heirs? Should it go to charity? Should it go to whoever wants to put in on it?
And the tough part, again, is if you make this too broad, then basically you put a lot of people who probably don't have the means to do it in court, trying to defend themselves. And, we have these exceptions of, the news, like, Fox 9 wants to talk about Prince or put Prince's name up, that's okay. But that's not broad enough for me. At least let's slow down. And I understand they're saying the clock is ticking in the meantime, and we're coming to the end of the term, but that's not a good enough reason to be this hasty. We've seen before what happens when we're really hasty at the state legislature, and stuff gets sort of bull rushed through, and we wonder about it later. And just because there's an emotional attachment here, that's not enough for me to say go ahead.
Our clock is ticking too. We got to get to the lightning round. First up, you guys mentioned this in audit. The U of M men's basketball coach, Pitino, went double over his travel budget to recruit. He was given permission, but what do you think about that, Justin?
Go ahead, defend him.
I'm still mad about this. I'm still mad about this 3 days later. We can debate the on-court stuff. We can debate the off-court stuff.
Can't debate it. It's been terrible.
It's been bad.
Yeah.
But this stuff, are you a Big Ten university? Are you not? Do you want to play in the big leagues or do you not? The budget was a joke to begin with, and he got it approved. His athletic director approved it. He went to him and said, I need to fly more. And Norwood said, go ahead. He did.
He wasn't disgraced.
And now they're piling on.
No, I'm playing with you, but I agree totally. It's like what we have here, the story is that a coach pushed to get more money. Alert the media, Lindbergh.
To try to find players.
To find players, and it got approved, and this is supposed to be scandal worthy of A1 now.
They're trying to make a case against
Bryce
them.
Harper of the Washington Nationals suspended for a game for using unkind words to an ump while they were playing the Tigers. The Cubs also sending a message by walking him 13 times in their series. Dan.
Well, on the first part, I'll let you if you want to take the second part. I got no sympathy for Bryce Harper. I'm hearing that people say, you know what? Fans are paying hundreds of dollars or thousands a year, and they're not there to go to see an umpire throw somebody out of a game.
Yeah.
And then he gets suspended. It's like, too bad. That doesn't give a player, even a superstar player, carte blanche. He gets thrown out. He then doesn't do what he's supposed to do, which is leave the dugout. He wants to celebrate with his team on the field. And what does he do? He takes another cheap shot profanity. He admits at it and gestures towards the ump. He absolutely deserves to be suspended. I got no sympathy for him.
And if I'm the Cubs, I walk him every single time he goes up to the plate. You try to win the game.
The next guy can
exactly. You try to win the game.
Yeah.
I kind of like Bryce Harper more than you, I think. He doesn't bug me as much.
In general,
he wants it to be
because
fun.
You're younger than I am.
No, but I'm usually old school on this.
Okay, next
get
up.
off my lawn.
It's because he's so good.
It seems to
he has
come up
proved
and
it.
then dies in the Minnesota legislature every session. Sunday liquor sales. Justin.
I will have quit drinking by the time this finally gets passed. I don't know what I'm missing here. I don't know why people are so annoyed by the possibility that you might be able to go buy a six-pack on a Sunday. A lot of people clearly want it. There's tax dollars that come. The mom and pop operation, that defense that, well, you make them stay open, their business will crumble. For one day, really, I don't buy it. I don't know what they're waiting for, but it's getting closer and closer.
My proposal is I don't even want to hear it reported until it actually gets passed. Because how many years in a row have we heard about this?
Probably
5.
And
it is getting closer.
Yeah.
But the next time we hear about it and talk about it, I want it the only news at this point is that it actually gets passed. Otherwise, let's just move on.
Aren't you sick of going to Wisconsin to buy your wine coolers on a Sunday?
Well,
wouldn't you like to go right down the street?
How do you know I don't have?
You got
special,
people?
I got people.
Okay, we won't put it on the show until it passes then. Have you guys heard of a padcaster? They're actually been around for a while, used in the TV industry, but it makes it even easier to be your own filmmaker. Dan.
Well, it's the next step.
It is.
In ruining any sort of tourist attraction for the rest of us.
Youth
the
concert.
iPad wasn't big enough, now you got this huge boom microphone attached to it, and you got people trying to do their own shows. We want to do our own show. We don't need millions of other people doing their shows. It's asking for even more trouble, and you know that it will become the rage without any question. And then eventually they'll do what Disney does and say we're going to ban this sort of stuff like we banned selfie sticks, and we'd all be better off if they were banned.
I can't wait for the Barrero show via Padcaster, though, in like 10 or 15 years.
Have you seen the size of the microphones?
I think I want to get one.
With technology, they'd be a little tiny. They're these huge boom
Well, you got to start somewhere, and then they'll move it down.
I see.
We've got little microphones on right now. That'll be the next step.
Yeah, I hope you're
They'll
right.
figure it out.
That show is
It's
coming
cool.
in 2017.
Oh, good.
Controversy over skim milk. Recent study showing that skim may be overrated. You can go ahead, drink that whole, that 2%. You know it's hard to keep up with research. Sometimes red wine is good. Sometimes it's bad. Dan.
Chocolate, too.
I'm speechless because, again, if people want to know why folks don't always trust doctors as having the last word, is doctors tell us this is an absolute. This is bad for you. And we were told, I was shamed to stop drinking whole milk. And now we've come to find out, well, actually, whole milk makes it less likely that you eat some other stuff because it fills you up more. And I say to them, why didn't you guys think of that before you lectured me and made me feel like a complete goofball for liking whole milk? Now, I can't even think of whole milk, and I don't think I'm going to be able to make the switch back.
I sat there with my milk over the bowl with the skim today, and I just couldn't bring myself to pour it because of what we've learned.
1%?
I bailed. I just went right to oatmeal. I said oatmeal with